Thanks for joining us. And like I said, I'm Maureen, and I'm going to introduce Kathleen to just give us a little understanding of grief and what we should know.
Yeah, I think, thank you for having me. And I think what's most important about grief is that it goes unrecognized. And the key to actually moving through really difficult emotional times is to allow yourself to grieve, which is actually called mourning. And they're different. So what's been talked about a lot lately is people not allowing grief. And so when things happen that are problematic or troublesome or bring up a lot of emotion, a lot of our history around grief will come up as well. And I think the important thing is there's no right way to grieve. There's no one way of being around grief. There's not a timeline with grief. And I just heard a beautiful podcast with David Kessler, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and he's written a book about finding meaning and it being the sixth stage of grieving, getting to the other side, beyond acceptance. And he actually said something so interesting that I thought I would share just because I heard it, is that it's not that grieving gets smaller with time. It's that we get bigger and grow because of our grief. And I thought that was beautiful. He's talking about death and dying. But I think that's the vision you and I have, is being able to be present with others around grief so that we can learn and grow and become bigger and move through this and companion one another through these tough times. So we can learn and grow and also become bigger through our own grief. There we go.
Okay, there I go. Thanks so much. Will you give everyone a little bit of your background, Kathleen?
Sure. I am just opened up a private practice as, I'm recently certified as a death doula and coach with specialization, life coach with a specialization on grief and loss and death and dying. And it reminds me of when I got a degree as a nutritionist. So my background is in nutrition, and I've been in private practice there. Is now that I have the knowledge, I see grief everywhere. And it reminds me of nutrition. I used to see certain nutrition issues everywhere once you start studying. So we certainly are in a year where grief is being talked about a lot.
I'm going to admit Lynn. Just a second.
Oh, great.
Lynn, I'm so happy you found us. Can you hear me, Lynn? You're on mute. Lynn, we're going to keep going. You're on mute. Apologies for the mislabeling the time, but I'm glad you're here with us. Oh, yay, there you are. Would you like to say hello, Lynn? Okay. Oh, you're back on mute. Well, we're going to go on. She's wanting to be admitted again. Hi, Lynn. Lynn, can you hear us?
Why are you coming on my phone?
Okay, you know what? Because you have the two things going, you're echoing.
Yes. I don't know how I did that.
You can see you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mislabeled the time. And when I went to log in and I saw that it was gone, I thought, where is it? And I went back to the sent. Lynn, we were just starting and starting the conversation. Our other guest, Debbie, is unable to attend at the last minute, but we're just in the middle of introducing ourselves. So I just started. Kathleen just up. She is our grief coach. She's a grief coach and a nutritionist and a death doula. And she was the one that I reached out to when I realized what I was experiencing was grief around the Black Lives Matter movement and some issues that my friends were experiencing. And I thought, processing it, I reached out to her to say, would you start these conversations? Would you be part of it with me? Because as I said, the only way I feel that I can move forward is to know better and do better and listen and understand and learn from my friends. So I'm so grateful you're here. And Kathleen just finished introducing herself. She gave us a great description on grief and mourning. And Chiaki, would you like to introduce yourself? And then we'll go to you, Lynn.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're muted, Chiaki.
Okay.
You're
Hi.
up.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. So my name is Chiaki Hirate. I'm originally from Japan, and then I came to United States about 11 years ago after living in Japan and then London, England. Then I'm a financial advisor at Edward Jones. And then so for me, listening is my main skill. I have to listen to my clients and find out what's really important to them, what's really they want to protect. So for me, it's kind of always try to be with them, listening, and then find out what they really going through. So just grief is definitely, sometimes yesterday actually one of my clients all of a sudden passed away. And then I really didn't expect he passed away before his wife. And I was really shocked. And then because last month we said, me and the client said, oh, because his client's wife is disabled. And then he really is ready to just going through, because emotionally he really didn't want to prepare, like a just in case plan. And then we didn't. And then, but I got the call from his friends, and then I was told he all of a sudden passed away, and his wife is in hospital. And I thought, but anyway, so, when I found out that Maureen's having this conversation, and I'm also leadership position inside Edward Jones in this area as a diversity and inclusion specialist. For me, it's because maybe I'm the only one financial advisor in this area in my company. Primary language, not English. So for me, every time somebody come to the farm, I really feel, they are included. That everybody can be themselves and express their concern and the fear, and then because we shouldn't be judgmental. And first of all, we always have to listen, and also we have to be humble, because we just, I also mentioned to Maureen, and I said, we only know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And then so important that each of us always remember, we only know what we know, and which means just if we live in here, lots of Japanese people said, oh, you live in America. But I feel like even inside America, it's in every place you go, it's lots of different culture. Your normal is actually not normal, right? And then I feel like when I found out that this conversation, I really love to join and then learn from you guys. Yeah, thank you very much for having.
Thank you. Lynn, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you, Maureen, for organizing this and being a catalyst for this kind of conversation to happen. I feel as though if more of these conversations were happening and more people were reaching out to attempt to understand, the saying goes, seek to understand and you will be understood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is so important. Where I love what you said, Chiaki, about, you know, America being such a melting pot of all kinds of cultures. We have to, all of us, put ourselves in that position to understand and be inquisitive to understand.
Mhm.
I just recently celebrated my 66th summer, and I'm so excited to be here because, um, you know, when I was growing up and they talked about how things were different and, you know, your parents' generation and their parents' generation, and I'm now at the point where I can see that having happened in my own life, those times and the changes that have come about. And I think that now is the time for these conversations to happen because we are ready for the change that needs to happen. And a little about me, my background, 35 years in the commercial real estate lending arena, in executive management and overseeing teams and being in that leadership position, growing leaders. About 10 years ago, I started my own business, and it started in commercial real estate with me helping women business owners to grow their businesses, especially those who were in retail and had real estate. Um, and it morphed from there into a wider focus for helping women business owners because of the background that I had in business development and um, encompassed so many other things. And one of the things that I really got attached to was when I was younger, my mom started a nonprofit organization. And I helped her in writing grants to get money for this organization. She was able to actually raise millions of dollars from local to state to federal opportunities. And um, seeing that world let me know the benevolence of people's hearts. And even from a governmental perspective, and then, you know, she did so many things that were part of the outreach into the philanthropic world. And so when in 2010, when the Obama Jobs Act came around and crowdfunding was opened up for small business, I got heavily involved in that. And I still do a lot of crowdfunding campaign creation for clients and helping them to run their campaigns. Um, I haven't done that much working with nonprofits, but I'm very active in my church, in the community. And of course, with networking, you're always finding somebody who needs something. And so I'm constantly connecting and doing things to help, especially building women business owners. And at this stage, I am aggressively working to build my business, which has kind of niched into women in business who are in the health industry, health and wellness, doctors and health practitioners, and especially around the message of using food as medicine. As difficult as it is to see the racially charged environment that we live in, it's equally difficult for me to see the condition of people and our healthcare system because it's really a sick care system and we need to build a well care system. And I think that COVID may have been an opening, a widening of the door open to get us to the point where more holistic opportunities are available to us. So
Yeah.
that's me.
Well,
You know, when you talk,
Kathleen is a nutritionist besides a grief coach and death doula. So yeah, you're on the right call. Thank you so much, Lynn. And Jenny, I'm going to have you tell a little bit about yourself. Just to
Hi, I'm Jenny. Gosh, I started my own business again. I was a professional organizer, and I had helped a lot of people downsize. And uh, one of the things that has been a gift for me was I've lived 11 years outside of this country in a lot of different countries, like Algeria to Italy to England to Spain to Austria. So I've learned that there are many, many ways of being, and we all have the same feelings, but what makes us feel more are different. And so I have a great respect. So when I would go into people's homes, I would be like, okay, this is a new country. What are their traditions? What's important to them? You know, how do they do things? And let's make a system that's going to be good for them to do it. And one of the things, though, I have to say that I really saw in helping people downsize, especially, is that in all the times I downsized people, there was not one client of color. And into all the retirement communities, there was only one person who was Black who lived in any of the communities I went into. And I asked one of my clients, who was a very liberal woman who had 80 years old, just an amazing woman. I asked her why she thought that was. I was just interested in hearing it. And she said, well, maybe they just didn't like this place. I said, no, you know, they didn't amass. They didn't have the job opportunities. They didn't have the GI Bill. They had redlining. There's so many reasons why you don't see anyone who is Black in this moderate community. It wasn't a very expensive one. And my background is, my mother was Irish and Scotch Irish, but my father was half Mexican and half Native American, Ojibwe Indian. And so the my grandfather was taken from his people and put into Indian school. And so I've seen what racism can do down through the family line. And I've seen, my father had such self-loathing because he was so dark. You know, he raised in the 50s, and, you know, it was a very tough time. And I just know that that's one millionth of what an African American person faces every day. Just the amount of microaggressions plus the real aggressions, the really hard aggressions. I just have felt such an empathy and affinity, because a lot of what's happened for the Native Americans and the Mexican side of my family has really been fought hard through the Black experience. And so I feel that I owe a debt to the Black community for maybe being the most resilient, the most forgiving race, who still are working just to have a peaceful day. I mean, I can't, you know, I have friends who, I have somebody who's, we're getting him help. He just sounds suicidal. He's just had it, you know. I think it broke him open, all of this. And so it's been a long, hard listening for me since Obama. I just remember in 2008 being very excited and joining all of these. They used to be so many different forums, and going in and just saying, okay, I'm not Black, but I just want to join in. And they're like, oh, come on in, but don't tell us what to do. And I learned so many things. And so it's been 12 years of just listening, and with all the deaths that were just, you know, Sandra Bland on top, on top, on top. I got to the point, it's like, when is it going to break? And then finally, I think COVID allowed America enough pause to say, we have to see this.
Yep.
And so that's who I am and where I am. So.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Jenny's told me some stories. The story of your uncle taking your grandfather back
Oh,
to
my
the
brother
your brother taking your grandfather back to that Indian school. They couldn't even get there because of his adverse reaction.
He was like 80 years old, just shaking in the car saying bad, 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 like a very young child. And my brother pulled over and said, what? He goes, bad, bad. And he goes, to school, he goes, bad. And he goes, you don't want to go? And it's like, bad. Like, he was just back in that moment of terror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
okay.
I will tell you, I have reached out to a number of my friends of color, and a lot of them, this is our second time doing this, Lynn. We had such a rich, wonderful conversation the first time. And, I had originally thought that I wanted it to just be African-American women. But I did have a man join us the first time, and we were glad that we had a male voice. But we decided it should be more than just the Black community, even though it's about Black Lives Matter. I think that to say all lives matter, I know I've said that in the past, and we all believe all lives matter, but now it's about Black Lives Matter. And I think I agree with you, Jenny. I think that COVID, it was just like God's way of saying, enough. We need to take a look at this and see and have your eyes opened. And I think the fact that so many people were home, not working, and able to go out and protest and make their voices heard, it gives me hope for change. So, Kathleen, is there anything that you want to say to lead this discussion? Or
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about coming into tonight that was voiced last time was the concern that the discussion will stop, that we won't keep talking about it, that it'll get buried in other matters. And I think that that's what we are committed to, is what's happened since and how are people doing, because things have changed. John Lewis died. I mean, there's lots of events that keep the grieving alive for us and in the news, because I think that was one of the concerns that hit me last time was, we've been here before, we've been hopeful before, and there was a worry about being too hopeful. And I think that really made me do some soul searching about how to keep it alive in a way that's really meaningful to the community.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, and what I didn't say was a number of people that I've invited, it's still too raw for them to talk about and speak about. So they want to come, but this is a hard time, I can imagine. And
It really is. And for me, I think that the hardest part of it all is seeing what's happening from the White House.
oh,
Honestly, I cringe when I see the news. I cringe when I think about what could flow out of this man's mouth.
yes.
And not to be critical, but to be quite vulnerable. I am energetically upset in the possibilities of what could come from him, because a lot of what has occurred has been prompted by either what he said or what he has done, what he has allowed and agreed to. And, you know, I've had some of my white friends ask me in particular, well, I just don't agree with the riots. You know, I can understand the civil unrest, I can understand, you know, the protests, peaceful protesting, but why the riots? And we are at a point in time where it has to be felt deeper, harder, in a higher blaze
But
than,
the yes, I'm sorry that they aren't okay with the peaceful protests. I mean, look at Colin Kapriski. I mean, sorry, I'm mutilating his name. I'm not a football fan,
Colin
so
Kaepernick.
yeah. Look at, I mean, what did he do? He just knelt, and that was like, that was such an affront. So sorry, I'm sorry,
And
but
affront to
I'm
our president who can't even recite the national anthem. And at, you know, when he was at a party and the national anthem was being played and he's over doing everything except showing reverence to after
but
he,
the latest thing on YouTube, sorry, was that guy. I'm a white supremacist, and he slapped this woman hard. I don't know if you saw that one,
no,
but yes, she was a server. Uh, uh, she was of color. I don't know. You couldn't see, but they were trying to, he was like undressing and saying, really just very rude. And he was saying what he was going to do, and they were trying to stop him. Hey, there's kids, and he's, I don't care, I'm a white supremacist, we're going to own everything. And this woman said, no, you can't come in here. And he slapped her hard, and then everybody tackled him. And
you know, I think the sad thing is I remember telling my sons this.
terrible.
I remember telling my sons this at the time of the election, that this man is such a racist and he's allowing hate to come to the surface where it was under, I mean, it's been there. You know, I like to think that had gotten better as a country, but it's been simmering under the surface, but he just allowed it to come and people to freely express it, which is a tragedy.
I agree wholeheartedly. Jenny, you're muted.
The thing is that I honestly think being where no one can escape what's really been happening all this time. And yes, it's worse because they've been given a carte blanche from Donald, but I've seen the hate. I remember waiting for my luggage with my grandmother and people shouting "spick." You know, I know that this is not new, and and so I just, the part that is just so open that there is, to deny it is really to be deluded, and everyone knows that you're deluded now. So in that sense, I am glad that we now no longer can say it's not happening. I don't know why they're so upset. You know what,
They're upset
everybody's
because it requires them to admit that they are racist, that they are, you know, separatists, and it's okay with them. They like it that way. Versus, you know, people are people. We all, you know, breathe the same air, shed the same color blood. I mean, you know, and there's no telling if something happened to you and you were in a life or death situation, whose blood might you need and in fact have that's available. It might not be who you think it is. Why would you separate yourself from that opportunity? Why would you cut yourself off from that possibility? And to know that this has been going on since the creation of the American country, You know, I love the United States. I love living here. I love the opportunities that I have had in the in even in the wake of all of the disappointments and the disgraces that I've had to endure. Um, you know, I'm teaching my grandson now, and most of you probably have heard, you know, I have to teach my grandson about driving and what to do if he gets pulled over by a police officer. That I know that my white friends don't have to have that kind of conversation with their kids. And I know that I have to treat myself differently than others. I remember driving from Atlanta to go see my mom. She lived in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. It was rather late. It was dark. My kids were asleep in the back seat of the car, and I saw a cop car passing me, turned around, put on his lights, and pulled me over. I rolled down my window a little bit. Excuse me, officer, is there a problem? And I don't think that he expected me to address him like that, which totally changed things for him. Where are you going? You know, it's kind of late. Um, and he looked, kids asleep in the back seat. Yes, my kids and I are going to visit my mom. You know, all of this. But I was terrified.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine that my white girlfriends had to go through anything like that.
You know, Lynn, I've had this conversation with a friend of mine. You know, this was well before any of this. And I said, you know, I don't have to worry when my kids go out, when my sons go out. And I said, do you worry every time your son goes out? And she said, every single time. Her children wanted to go to the protests here in Seattle. And she just begged them not to. She said, because I'm too afraid for them. I'm too afraid. And this woman is highly educated. You know, she's a social worker for the state of Washington, but the stories that we've talked about over the years have been powerful. But that, you saying that, that's one thing I knew. And I told her, I know, my boys don't have to have the same worries that your son does, that your daughter does, but especially your son. I think Black young men are just considered, they're, you know, they're guilty of something, you know, and it's so powerful to, you know, and she's told her kids through all of this. She said, the way to make change is to exercise your right to vote. And she said, you're both 18 now. And she said, that's how I want you to have your voice heard. And she said, Maureen, it's too raw for me to come and talk about things right now. It's just too raw and painful for her. Yeah, Jenny, what do you have to say?
Sorry. Just so I have two brothers. One looks Irish and the other one looks Mexican. So at the same time in the late 70s, early 80s, both were pulled over. My little Irish one fought the police. "Ah, what are you doing? You're wrong. You're all this." Nothing happens to him. My other brother, who looks Mexican, he was in Texas going to diesel mechanic school. He was pulled over for a traffic uh, infraction, and he was taken into custody but not arrested. And he sat in a jail cell for a week without a call to a lawyer. So that tells you the difference, and just in the way they looked. And my oldest brother, the one who looks Mexican, he is probably the most easygoing. And they liked him so much they made him a, what do they call it, where he got to sweep the jails out, and they liked him. They didn't release him, but they liked him. So that that is the difference. And that's just, you know, uh, he's not, he's olive skinned, you know, black curly hair, olive skinned. You know, I don't know what would have happened if he were black. You know, the possibilities. I just don't, you know, I it just pains me. This pains me so much that we are so disrespectful and don't see humanity in people. It just pains me. Anyway, so okay.
No,
I know, and I feel like I'm overtaking this place, so I'll put
you
myself on
brought
mute.
something to mind for me, Jenny, that has really been an issue throughout the centuries and is still an issue today, which is, you know, back to our point about teaching our Black kids how to govern themselves out in the street, which, you know, you always want to see them being respectful and, you know, looking out for others like they would want somebody to look out for them. But to know that police will perpetrate crimes on them in order to get them in jail, including false accusations, because that is what has built a multi-billion-dollar prison system.
Yes.
And to know that there are laws on the books that actually allow for the arrest of Black men to be tried and sentenced, even held in jail without being accused of a crime, go through the system, end up at the penitentiary, once again, not even having been charged with a crime, and be part of the prison system because they have used the prison system and the men as free or very low cost labor in places where they used to have slaves. And it has been extremely lucrative for them. And it used to be a governmental monetized system. And now they've made it public so that, you know, rich and it's white men are able to own these huge prisons and do the same thing, collect money for each inmate upon receipt of them, hire them out to do certain jobs, billing at some rate, and either not paying or paying a nominal amount of money to the individual for whatever the work they do. And it could be anything from hard labor to now you've got the tech savvy ones who they will pay to do technical stuff. And I mean, it's a system that was created to incarcerate a race of people and keep them incarcerated throughout generations. And we were talking about this not too long ago about how, you know, there's some generations, in the Japanese culture, family is huge. Family is big. Family will, you know, stay together, live together, grow their economic well-being, and then branch out to continue that growth. And um, the system has purposefully created the separation and the mindset that it is not possible because, you know, back in the days of slavery, they would take people from their families. They would snatch children away. They would take mothers away to go to a different farm in a different state, so that the families would be purposefully divided. And that has been perpetuated throughout the generations where I would say this generation of, and I'll call it my age, so maybe the grandparent level, is probably some of the first generation who is requiring, as the matriarchal or patriarchal head of the family, requiring the family connection and the family learn new aspects of family dynamics. And it's going to take several more generations for that kind of healing to occur because it has been pervasive from the beginning. And I mean, in Africa, you've got in the villages, I mean, it's one of the places where I truly believe the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I believe that, you know, between Native Americans and Africans, that was the theme of how they raised their children and how they stuck together and supported each other. And we have grown apart. And for as much as COVID has created separation, I think the separation has opened us up for more awareness. And I'd honestly like to kind of find out what you feel and what you've seen as far as your own communities. And, you know, I was looking at a friend of mine's Facebook page the other day, and I know she's got a lot of Black friends. I saw no pictures of her and any of her Black friends, business associates, anything. And it made me wonder, why was that? How could that be?
Yeah.
Um,
You're making me think. I haven't posted a lot of pictures of me and friends in general. That's a really good question. You know, I realized I hadn't posted anything, and when John Lewis died, I mean, how could we not honor that man? I mean, what he's done for our country, and so I did post on that. But it's making me think, I haven't really posted many pictures of any of my friends. I need to get on there. But yeah, you're right. In seeing that, I'm thinking the last time I posted a picture with me and one of my women friends of color.
and I mean, you know, it's like an eWomen Network lunch. You know, I would purposely create a group. Let's all take a picture. Or I would be the one in there saying, you know, let me interview you. You know, 2 minutes. What do you like about whatever? What do you do? Just to show the interaction that we have with each other, because that's part of the problem as well. When you don't see us all interacting, you don't know that it's happening.
Well, that's the thing about. I was in a BNI group with Kim Peterson. So I think, do you know Kim
No,
Peterson? Or she wasn't on the same call
Kim
with
was
her.
on the call last month.
Okay.
So only Kathleen has met her.
Okay. So, but that BNI chapter was one of the few BNI chapters that we had like 4 people of color, sorry, Black Americans. And then we had, you know, few of us who were mixed, and then we had another Latino, and you know, a few others. So it was a pretty mixed crowd, which was stunning, because it was the third BNI chapter I belonged to, and most of them, it's mainly just white people. And I was like, where are the Black businesses? So I belong to eWomen Network, and when this all started to go, I sent an email to our chapter leader, Marianne, and said, what are we doing? How are we bringing in Black women into our chapter? What are we doing? And she goes, oh, we've got somebody who's on it.
Well, you know, I have
It's,
invited so many of my friends.
but
This is
my thing is, I think we should waive any, for all of eWomen Network, we should waive any fees. We don't care if you're doing well or not. We owe you. Bring them in, because if we could all just get more diversity into these eWomen type of networking, that will do it. And I would say, you know, I know that I've gotten, because I liked so many things on Facebook that were Black owned, that I was invited to Black women's stuff. I was like, I just need to let you know, this is, you know, I'm, you know, I don't have any blood. My brother had it checked out. We are just Neanderthals. That's basically what we are. We're just the Mexican and the Irish, you know, and a lot of Neanderthal blood. We don't, nothing from Africa, I'm afraid. But I really think when there is so much amazing potential that we are not tapping into and we're not welcoming. I understand, you know, just reading so much that there's like, yeah, I don't know if I can trust my white sisters. They seem to say a nice thing, and I would understand why you'd want a group knowing that you're fully supported. It's not just being nice. It's a real support. So I think we should really go over and beyond to bring in more women of color and, you know, different ethnicities, different viewpoints, really be a lot more open. I think it's, and that's a problem, because I know there's a lot of Black businesses, and when we had that blackout day, I thought instead I just promoted all the people from my that I know who are Black owned businesses, and I just wrote something and posted all over my Facebook about what they're bringing, asking who I could buy from. You know, I follow Black vegans on Instagram, and, you know, because it's, you know, I decided earlier, I think like 2 days ago, I'm going to keep my Black Lives Matter around my profile, because that's not going to ever go away.
It's not going away.
So I just think we can't just open the door. We have to make a place of honor to bring in, and we really have to prove ourselves above and beyond
And I think
for
that
everyone.
that is a huge obstacle for some people because, you know, it's tough to really say, you know, I have had the benefit of my whiteness and my white culture, and, you know, I admit that I have a problem with what happened at the beginning of things, you know, and how history was written to create this persona of, you know, grandeur. And, you know, I, every time I think about Christopher Columbus and how when I was in school, you learned Christopher Columbus discovered America and it was a beautiful thing. And then you find the real history books that talked about how he went through, you know, Africa and the islands and South America. And, you know, not only did they steal people, but they raped and pillaged and, you know, just everything all along the way. And it's like, how do you celebrate that? Who in their right mind would even want to write the story that that is, you know, the best thing since sliced bread and then some? I mean, and it's painful. I get that. But I also get that without that, we can't get to the next stage.
Yeah.
I find the social media really polarizing because of the political and the COVID. I feel like it's like so layered that this kind of forum makes sense to me because it creates a safe space. My community is full of book groups, and I teach in higher education, so there's all kinds of opportunity with education, but the safe space it isn't always necessarily being created. And so there is, what I want to make sure is not reinforce anything that isn't meaningful for people and creates more polarization. Yeah, so that's been my experience so much. When Maureen talked to me, I was like, I'm creating a group. I'm going to invite people for a group to come in so that we can talk about the grief, because this is not an intellectual exercise only. It's really, you know, of going in and going deep within and recognizing. And I think that the education and having a platform to really understand, and I think having the same language is really important so that we all have some place to start from. So I appreciate the education, but I feel like that's been a big push in my community, is to get educated. Where I feel like the emotional piece and the grieving and really going within and doing self-reflection, really with safety, with everybody wanting to be compassionate for one another, is what draws me, and why I'm so glad we're doing this.
I agree. I think that is part of what has drawn me as well, because it took, I went on this journey as well to find out the information that I was missing and to reconcile my own thoughts and feelings and the grief that I had around things that I've lived through and things that I've heard. I can't imagine what it felt like to be a Black man living in the White House, doing the job of president, leading a nation. Yet we didn't see him buckle under all that we know, because we can imagine was coming at him. Because what our current president has allowed for is the uncovering of all of the years of covertness, covert racism, covert hatred, covert, you know, despicable actions against other people. They came out, you know, it's funny. It used to be that they were all masked and they did their things and perpetrated crimes against people under their masks. They came out of their masks and were exposed, many of whom were in prominent positions in corporate America and the like. And, you know, I hate to say it, but thank God corporate America said, no, that's not part of what we really stand for. Although, you know, going back in history, a lot of what has occurred is because of what corporate America wanted from society. And, you know, we're looking at a time now where we're all masked and going out. And it's kind of like, who am I looking at? You know, what is the real person that is standing in front of me, even if they're 6 feet away? You know, it's like the mask has now become a different symbol. And, you know, how are we going to look at that now? That, you know, once we do kind of get the okay to step out a little more, we're all still supposed to be masked. And I don't know for how long, but
Longer than we think.
yeah. Yeah, and then when we get unmasked again, do we go back under the invisible mask or the bigger mask and go back to some of the actions that were taking place before? Because a lot of people are saying they can't wait to get back to all of that.
Yeah. Chiaki, do you have anything to add?
You know, because as a first generation of the immigrant, right? You know, I came to United States 11 years ago. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of fascinating because wearing mask, you know, have you ever been to Japan?
No, but I know that's a natural.
Okay. Basically, when you go to Japan, most of the time, most people wear the mask. So for me, wearing mask is just kind of a safety issue. But here is America, people think, you know, oh, this is, you know, this is not our right. Or it's kind of interesting because I feel just we are talking about just safety. The same with just going to a hospital, you know, like you have to wear the mask, the same thing. But now people think, oh, wearing mask is, they add a little bit different meaning. it's kind of constitutional right or something like that. I feel like it's so, for me, it's kind of observing people's reactions. It's very interesting because it's have to protect, because as you know, as a member of the community, everybody has a responsibility. We have to consider our health and also the other person's health. So just simply we have to wear the mask, and that's really different. And at the same time, it's really shocked to hear, the African American mother, because I'm also mom, said, every day have to worry, every day make sure, that my son come back safely. I feel like I never thought of that. And I thought, and for me, maybe I'm just ignorant. I just don't know. Simply why it's when people wanted to join the police stations, they have to go through ethical educations, or from the very beginning, like a kindergarten. Because the area I live in Bellevue. What I like about my area is really diversified. When initially I went to the area, I realized mostly just 95% is white people. Then I thought, and then when I came to Bellevue side, I thought all of a sudden saw the rows of Asian people, and I felt comfortable. Then I picked up the area I feel comfortable to raise my family. And that's why we moved to the Bellevue side. But it's kind of I feel everybody should be humble to learn each other, because everybody has something, we have a faith, we have belief, which means everybody has a different belief, right? So for you, your belief is so important. That's why I also have belief, but we respect each other. And I feel that's kind of a simple thing. And then because your belief is not important than mine, just know it's kind of wonderful about us is because even we have different background, different culture. I feel if we are open, we can learn each other. Then I really believe that, that my farm is also, they focus on the diversity and inclusion, because they also know the company has more diversity and inclusion, they can thrive. Because everybody has unique opinion. We can have different view, which is so important. So that's why that's kind of my my
Thank you so much, Chiaki.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn, you said something a little earlier. I mentioned it on the last call. Years ago, I lived in Chicago, and some friends were visiting, and I went to the Oprah show, because anytime anyone came to Chicago, they wanted to go see Oprah. And one of the topics came up, and it was, she made the comment that white people have to take responsibility and own slavery. And I was indignant. I thought, I do not have to. I wasn't here. My family, they were high up in New England or California, where it was barely a state when the Civil War was fought, and there was no slave. I was just indignant because inclusiveness is one of my 5 strengths, from Strengths Finders. And I was like, but as the years have passed, I have thought about that so much. And I've thought about, maybe I wasn't personally involved, and I've benefited from the white privilege that I have. I've benefited like my Black friends have not. They've had to fight their way. They've had to, I didn't come from a wealthy family. It wasn't like we had lots. We were very much a working class family, but I benefited. I benefit as a mother of white boys, not having to worry. So I have thought about that so many times over the 30 years since I was there in her audience that day. And I thought, yes, I do have to take ownership of that. And I do have to, I think I take ownership of the white privilege I've received from it. And that's what I want to change. You know, I can't change it. I can't change it. I can't change being white, but I can learn and I can listen and I can continue to grow. And that's my hope from all of these conversations, because I have really experienced a lot of grief around this. Over the years I remember I worked at an all-black hospital in Atlanta, Lynn. It's not there anymore. It's Southwest Community Hospital. I was a traveling nurse. And, you know, to
I
have
remember that hospital.
what's that?
I remember that hospital.
Yeah, and I loved the experience. And we lived in Union City. That's where they housed us as traveling nurses, a predominantly Black neighborhood back when I was there in the 80s. And, but, you know, I remember writing to my friends that I'd gone to college with and stuff. And I remember one friend particularly, he was raised in Oakland, in more of the ghetto part of Oakland. But I said, Byron, I now, you know, I had a glimpse of what you go through every day by walking onto the elevator and being the only white person and not being able to blend in and be the only white person working. You know, my friend, sometimes we worked on the same floor, sometimes we didn't. But my friend that I was traveling with, but we were the only white nurses that we saw on the night shift there. And I am so grateful for that experience, because I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood in Orange County, California. And I remember out of my large high school, there were 6 Black kids in my class. And we had a class of like, I don't know, close to 1,000, well, probably over it. I think it was over 1,000 kids. Lots of Mexican and very few Asians. But I remember a girl moved from Los Angeles, and she kept saying, why won't the white boys ask me out? And because she wanted to, and I said, you don't understand. You're in Orange County, and you know, this just isn't the way it's done here back in the 70s. She was my friend, and but she just was always shocked that the only boy that would ask her out was the Black boy. So I was so grateful that you know, I have had the experiences I've had. But that Southwest Community Hospital was such a valuable gift to me. And I just, you know, I want to continue these conversations, because I think the only way we can do better is by learning from each other. Mm-hmm. So that we can know better and then do better.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's the stories that we tell that help us to learn more.
Yes.
You talked about a word that, you know, we sometimes want to gloss over, and that's grief. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many points of grieving, and I can imagine the journey that you had from getting triggered into that, taking offense to the thought of taking responsibility for something that you felt like was totally outside of your sphere of everything. And you're not alone. And, you know, to recognize that our journeys have been forward movement is what makes us alike. You know, they were different journeys, but all in that forward movement. So my son married a Japanese woman. And,
oh, really? I didn't know that.
From Okinawa, and my 2 grandsons are half Japanese and half African American. And my son passed away in 2012. That's what got me back to Atlanta. I was living in California at the time, where I met Rick. And Rick Justice, who Maureen, is really how Maureen and I got introduced to each other. And so in 2012, I'm looking at, you know, life's just moving along, doing pretty good, living in California. And, you know, I get the phone call that my son's been killed suddenly. And it's like, what? It was a motorcycle accident, so it wasn't like somebody killed him. But it changed our whole world, my whole world. And you talk about a journey of grief, it's like put the Black experience aside. It's like this is some real stuff. And a lot of times we don't even recognize that we have those kinds of similarities.
Mhm.
You know, we want to be so separate sometimes that everything is separate. But I've talked to so many women who have been in that space of having lost a child that it's there's a bond between us now. And I have to tell you, I think only one of the women that I've talked to that has had that experience has been a Black woman. Everyone else has been white women, but we've been able to share in that experience to see and confirm how alike we are, which is also a couple of those women have asked, well, I want to learn more about the Black experience because seeing how we're on this same trajectory as it relates to this type of grief, it occurred to me that you might be grieving about this. I mean, one of the biggest things for me was when all of this was blowing up, I'm the one reaching out to people and saying, are you okay? And how are you doing? How are you holding up? And I sat back one day, several weeks into it, and thought, no one has called me. No one has reached out and said, hey, Lynn, are you okay? How are you doing over there? I have always had an online business and kind of felt secluded as far as the outside community, but none of my online friends had even inquired. And I think that that is part of what we need to do in bridging the gap as well.
You know, I think that people don't know how, first of all, recognizing that it's grief around Black Lives Matter, you know, around all that's going on, but grief in general, people don't know how to reach out with grief. As an oncology nurse, I was always shocked when I was young that, you know, families didn't come because they just didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle it. People don't say things. I've always taught my boys from the time they were little, they've experienced a lot of death early, you know, in their young life. But I said, always acknowledge it. All you have to do is say, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. Or how are you doing? You know, just don't not acknowledge what's going on. And I think that's with this too, is don't not acknowledge it. We cannot close our eyes to grief of any kind, but also the change that I'm hoping will come from this. And like you said, Lynn, it will probably take generations, but I'm hopeful that the change is starting more so than I've ever seen. And it's because the young people are out there. The young people are what's, to me, making the difference. And I'm hoping, I've always said the way you can prevent prejudice is by educating the children. It's the children are not born prejudiced. They're not born knowing anything other than that they're all just here learning and embracing life. And we teach them. Society teaches them prejudices and biases. And so I'm hoping that through continued conversations, we can keep going.
I'm going to step over you again, Maureen. I'm sorry.
That's
But
okay.
I think that's the beauty of having the internet, is that now people the reactions from around the world of young people of what's happening in America is like, we don't live like that. We're shocked by this, by so many different things, that the youth of America are finally seeing that all the stuff that we're number one in, that maybe we're not. Maybe we, uh, uh, you know, Jackie said, we have a responsibility to other people. I don't know if our society actually feels that we have a responsibility to other people. But
maybe
you
different
know,
culture.
yeah,
Different
because we
culture.
love the rugged individual, that's for sure.
Yeah,
We love that. But
different. Yes, because we in our culture, we have to think other people before us.
right. But I grew when I was 15. I went to Algeria, and at that point, Algeria was a socialist country, and we lived above. We lived in the apartment above a family. The father worked out of France, and he had a daughter my age, so we were about 12. And so during Ramadan, it was her first Ramadan. So we couldn't, you know, she'd always coming up. We had a glass of water. We'd always have to put it away out of respect. But she was so hopeful. We spoke in French, sort of, and we would go to meet her teacher and walk down the street, and all the kids would follow us because there was only like 7, you know, non-Algerians, and we were way down in the Sahara. We were really far down, and I got to meet her teacher, and we played checkers with bottle caps, and this young girl, Saida, which means happiness in Arabic. What a beautiful name. She
Mhm.
wanted to be a teacher like her teacher and all of that. So then I went that fall. I had to go to school in Austria because they didn't have school for me in Algeria. And there was a coup right after the Shah fell. Algeria went through a coup as well, and my parents had to leave. Like they had 72 hours to leave. And I always think about Saida, who was my age, and they got into a fundamentalist country, and so now this young girl who wanted to be a teacher probably couldn't be a teacher, and also would have to wear all the, you know, the coverings
Yeah.
that she hadn't had, because Algeria had been pretty open. And I think of her, and I think she can't vote. She can't vote now, and I think that's, well, that's you know, it was a third world country, but I think, you know what? There's so many. This is what kills me. There's so many people who can't vote here. I couldn't vote. I was thrown off the rolls. I've been voting for decades, and I was thrown off the rolls. I couldn't vote in the 2016 election. I caucused. I think somebody from my neighborhood put in something to get me off the rolls, to make them doubt that I lived where I lived. And it took
Oh,
me, I'm going to finally be able to vote again. But if
Good.
it's easy
you know,
for me to get off the rolls, there are so many people, this felons not being able to,
yeah,
if they've been rehabilitated, why do they lose a fundamental right of citizenship? I don't get that.
I agree. And, you know, for me, it's like, okay, we blacks got the right to vote in the 60s, and it's renewable. It is not something that is just like set and we're good to go. It is an amendment that has to be renewed every, I think it's 30 or 50 years, something crazy like that. I'm just, it's
Isn't that
mind boggling.
shocking at this day and age? That's why we have to continue John Lewis's work,
Well, this is why
raising some good
I,
trouble.
I also posted, you know, there's so many, you know, in 1920, women got the right to vote. I always like to say white women, because my grandfather was not a citizen, even though they think our tribe has been here 10,000 years. He was not a citizen until 1924. And let alone, I said, and I've just posted something within this last couple days about the black women suffragists, how hard they worked and what they're still having to work with now. I mean, that's what's, that's so, it's so crazy. It's just, I don't, you know, I
And,
don't.
you know, I just want to say too that, you know, in all of it, we were talking about how it's the young people who are out there who are raising the flag and lifting the voices, and you know they will be the ones to carry the mantle. And it is, they're doing it because of what it was that their parents did with them.
Mhm.
And I appreciate every parent who has a child who is part of this generation. I looked at some of the um, rallies and marches where, you know, the guy or the lady was talking, and all of her children, all of his kids were standing there right beside them. And, you know, it's that kind of activity and action that's going to be um, spread far and wide, that is going to help to continue the transition that are seeing has begun. And, you know, I want to give honor to George, oh my God, what's his name?
Floyd.
Floyd.
George Floyd, thank you. I'm sorry.
It's
Because he made the ultimate sacrifice that actually brought about so much that we're seeing is continuing today. To just be able to witness a police officer, just, you know, random day, a police officer, he was sitting in his car, pull him out of his car, and he ends up, you know, not 30 minutes later, dead
yeah.
under the knee of a police officer. And were it not for video, it could not be denied, where we know that that has happened countless times before. But because of video today, it's something that people can no longer say, if I didn't see it, it didn't happen.
Right.
I don't care what you're telling me. If I didn't see it, it didn't happen. Now you see it, what do you say?
But how
And
many? There's just been, I mean, can't we all just get along? Who said that? How many years
Nipsey
ago in
Russell,
Simi Valley? Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just, I mean, you just see this. Please don't kill me. You see people running. This just hurts. This
yes,
just hurts so much that, that people can look at that and not feel anything. I think we have a large amount of sociopaths, or if that's the right terminology, of people who are so unfeeling. I just can't believe how people cannot be moved
I
by
agree.
somebody's wounds.
And you know, I was listening to something just yesterday, and the whole premise of the conversation was about awakening the heart, because it is only someone whose heart is so callous that they refuse to see some of these things. They refuse to feel the pain and empathize with other people, unless it's at their own front door. And then still with a callous heart, there, you know, it gets into the front of hatred and, you know, retribution and, you know, all of the things that we fight against, and they do it and still get away with it. I mean,
You
South
know,
Georgia.
I've always told my boys, you know, they might get away with it, but as a Christian woman, I believe that they will have their judgment. And they, you know, even if it comes at their judgment day or whatever transition we make from this life, there, we do have to atone for our lives in some way. But it is so it's so shocking. And, you know, I always wonder, how were they raised? What pain have they had in their lives to cause this? Because to be that way, it's just so shocking. I have no words.
Mhm. And
Sorry,
that's,
I'm really sorry. I have to go.
No, we were just going to wrap this up,
Yeah,
Chiaki. But
and
thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, but thank you for including me. I really appreciate.
Well, I'm so glad you reached out. This is great.
Yeah,
But thank you.
It's so great to meet you, Chiaki.
Thank you. And thank you, Jenny and Kathleen too. Thank you.
Bye, Chiaki.
Bye. Sorry.
Anyway, we could talk about this all night, and I think it's such, gosh, just to keep the conversation going, my fear at times is that the conversation will stop and we'll go back. Life will go back to how it was, maybe not how it was before COVID, but that, how when you go to a conference and you're all hyped up and you come home and you're going to change everything you do because life's just, and then it slowly goes back to normal or to doing things the way you did. So my hope that through having these conversations is that we don't go back to normal. We don't go back to what we were before, that we keep the conversation moving forward and encourage others to have these conversations, to learn and to grow. I always said that we're a melting pot, and I heard Jane Elliott. It was funny. I heard Killer Mike on the Atlanta. I was watching, and I had heard about Jane Elliott, but he challenged. He encouraged every white person to spend an hour watching Jane Elliott. Well, I binge watched her, and one of the things that stood out was that she said, a melting pot, that means we all become the same. And that's what I've always told my boys, it's so wonderful that we're different. Wouldn't it be boring if we all had the exact same skin color and the exact same hair color and the exact same habits and the exact same upbringing? And she said, we should be a salad bowl where
Like that.
we each keep our own flavor together.
Right.
And so ever since I've been thinking of being
salads.
a salad bowl.
We call this the salad bowl conversations.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, there we
Salad bowl
go.
conversations.
That's
I love that, Kathleen. But that just struck me. So when I can't remember which of us said melting pot, I'm like, no, we're salad bowl. Whatever we bring, we need to bring our own flavor and to share it with others.
But I think also we need to make a vow. Like my vow now is not to let anything go. Anything posted online, just not let it go. Call it out. And promote. I mean, people who know me know that I'm not Black, but they're like, boy, you post a lot of things celebrating Black lives. It's like, yeah.
Because it matters.
Because yes, because until all of us are free, right? None of us are free. That's the favorite. It is so true. We have to uplift everyone. And I know just a small fraction of what not having opportunity based on race did for my father, his father, and I mean the people. My grandfather he worked the fields for a German family in Wisconsin. He was an indentured servant. They had him and his brother work the fields. So it's just this forced labor of minority children who didn't matter. They didn't see who they were. And, he worked the fields. And that is something that as I think back about my own family line, I cannot help but think about all the family lines that have all been suffering. And I know that right now, really because what we did to the Black population in this country is so singular. I mean, there's been genocide and running over people in their own countries. I mean, what happened to the Native Americans has happened to almost any people who had vandals or anybody come over but your population was brought over. That is so singular that until we heal that, we cannot heal the rest of it. That's the deep, dark wound that is, until we all heal it, this country can't go forward. And I think we're at a point where they are, the woo-woo community say the veils are going to be lifted. Oh yeah, they didn't expect the veils to be lifted on this, but that's what we need to deal with. That is exactly what we need to deal with.
As you were saying that, it made me think about the Dalai Lama talking about, the healing of the world will be by virtue of the Western woman. And that realization that, because I've always asked, so what is it going to take to heal our land? I know that, being a Christian woman, God says just, repent, ask me, and I will heal your land. And I think that it is going to be the collective womanhood who understands that, it was the narcissistic selfishness and greed of men
I,
that got us here. Because, we've seen women as leaders of countries, and, back to Nefertiti actually being a leader of a country in Africa.
mhm.
And, that has happened. Women have been leaders of villages and communities, and,
Pakistan.
you
but
know,
but when people would post that, and usually it would be, sorry, Maureen, my completely white friends, I would say yes, and I think she's a black woman, because the idea of a Western woman, just to shake that thought, is normally a white woman. But you are a Western woman. I am a Western woman. We're all Western women, but I just like to. I'm a kind of an instigator, that spirit of just like, I'm gonna knock you off what you think. Oh yes, it's gonna be a Western woman, and it's like, yeah, I think it's gonna be a black woman. Yeah,
well,
and to just, you just have to keep pushing those boundaries
yeah,
of what is set and what is normal.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. No, I do love my white side too, but I mean,
You're muted, Maureen.
Marine.
Thank you. My son and his friend his friend came over. They're outside watching a movie, but they were in the kitchen for a moment. It was really noisy, but I could just keep talking and learning
yeah, okay.
all night long. And I wish this conversation could keep going. And I want to wrap it up just in honor of everyone's time. I was thinking an hour and we'll just see where it goes. So thank you for being so open. And Kathleen and I thought we would do this every month for whoever wants to show up. And I was really happy Chiaki came, because she had seen I'd posted our first conversation on LinkedIn. I put the whole hour and 9 minutes. I wasn't going to, but I thought, I don't know how to cut it, that it would be, the stories were so rich and valuable and heart-wrenching and treasured stories. But I thought, I'm just going to put it out there. I don't know when to listen to the whole thing. But Chiaki contacted me and said, I saw that. I didn't watch it all, but I would like to join this conversation and learn. So I thank you so much. So if you'd like to come again, we'd love to have you and to continue the conversation. But, any way that any of you think we can help move this forward and to continue to not let this conversation die.
Yeah. And I would like it not just to be a conversation. I mean, I do the protesting with the Unitarians. They're very happy. They're on the east side, very, very nice, and what. But I feel that there's got to be action. I don't know.
I do. Well, I believe there has to be action too. And so many people don't even know how to start the conversation, or they're afraid, or they've never experienced anything like this, or they just don't know what to do. So just by starting the conversation, it gives them a place to start understanding. So yeah, I'm always for action. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Our platform has been grief, you know, and it can evolve into what we need it to. But that has been the platform, a place for people to come and show up and share their stories so that we can learn and grow and find inspiration from one another, and also to companion one another, to hold that safe space. So that's was
That,
my vision when we started, but I also just feel really open to change and movement.
but I do think I do like the idea. You know, because of these conversations, change will come back. Uh, gosh, 2015 maybe. I started a refugee committee at my church because I saw the Syrian boy washed up on the Turkish. I don't know if you remember, and the police officer, Turkish police officer, was holding this limp dead body, and I remember seeing that on the news and just being overcome and thinking, I have to do something, I have to do something. Um, and my little bit I did, it had ripple effects because I posted about my husband being an immigrant to this country, but he was white. So, you know, he didn't face this man who lost not only that child, but his an older son and his wife. They all drown in this overstuffed, capsized boat. And, you know, seeing him crying, saying, you know, his family had wanted to sponsor them. They had a sponsor in Canada and they were not let in. And I thought, I've got to do something. But so what I did was little here, but I kept posting, and friends across the country, because I've lived all over the country, my friends across the country, oh, we started this, we did that. So our little conversations can have big ripple effects.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we can just help open the eyes of people.
And I do think you're right, Kathleen, the grief, because I know that I've feel so strongly about it, and it's like, okay, I think it's anger, but no, a lot of it is grief.
Well, anger is a form of grief.
Yeah, it's just a lot of it is just, you know, it's like, I mean, I've seen, I I know what a lot of natives in this country live still like. You know, in South Dakota, it's like 250 miles before you can get to a doctor. You know, there's I in Algeria, when we would go into Constantine, you'd see all the Pepsi signs that made up houses, those, you know, on the outskirts of the gigantic towns. And so I just know that there's so much injustice in this world that it grieves me. But maybe it's really the grief that I can feel because of my lineage, you know, just the grief of, you know, my grandmother being the only one who spoke English as a young child, and you know what my grandfather had to go through just being Native American, and you know, running away from Indian school, which is horrible. And just seeing what's going on today, it just, you know, my friend Marvin, who he does handyman work, I got him, you know, joined him up with my friend Lassie, and he was helping us move her from one part of Bellevue to another, and we were like, where is he? It was like we came in one car and he was following us. Where is he? Like 20 minutes later, he comes and he goes, I got stopped. He was black man driving a truck in Bellevue. He goes, yeah, they just pulled me over and stopped me. And we were just like, we just cried, because it was just like, just trying to do a normal thing, that your life can go off trajectory. You know, the worst thing is being late. I mean, the least worst could be being late. The worst thing could be you could end up dead, because you just don't know how that person who's stopping you can feel.
Yeah,
Just, yeah. So there's a lot of grief.
there is.
There is a lot of grief, Kathleen.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To your point, Maureen, it's, you know, those who are saying that they're not ready to be in the conversation are deep in the grief.
Yeah.
Yes.
And um, I have to admit, the thing that helped me to move forward and out of the grief was being able to share what it was that I was thinking and feeling. Because you start wondering, am I being a little too,
Dramatic?
crazy in all this, dramatic? Um, and especially when you're around those who are fueling the thoughts. Because, if we're in families and we're supporting each other in all of this, the anger fuels more anger. And sometimes you need that outlet to say, I've been very angry in all of this, and allow some of that to disperse. And
Yes.
so I just really appreciate you for organizing this and taking the time to reach out to individuals to do this. I think that grief is so intertwined in all of this that it's something that has to be pulled into the conversation, because it's easy to say, no, I'm not grieving, or I don't want to think about that, put that to the side, but it's so much a part of it all.
Yeah.
And it comes out sideways or in ways that we don't want it to.
You're right. Yeah.
And it's like what you were saying, we're all the same. Like if you talk about an emotion, we can relate. To be human and experience emotions, we can relate to that.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And Lynn, it's just been so great connecting with you through the eWomen platform. I was so excited when I went to the Atlanta meeting and there you were. I was like, October, so.
Agree. And then going to the Seattle meeting and you were there.
Kathleen,
Yes.
we'll have to share eWomen Network with you another time. So
Yeah.
powerful group, but thank you all so much.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I will let you know when we're doing it again if you'd like to join us. Kathleen and I, last time our attendees said that at first I thought they wanted us to do it every week. Last time I was really just, it took me a day to decompress, with my friends sharing their stories. And it's a little bit different because we've shared stories, but having you being the only Black woman on the call, which wasn't supposed to be, but it was sort of nice. We were able to talk and I don't feel quite as heavy as I did after the last time, because I know that there will continue to be injustices against my Black brothers and sisters. And if I can, influence one person, all it takes is one person, because then that person might influence another person and go down the road. It's like that old commercial where you tell two people and they'll tell two people, but
Let it go viral.
What's that?
Let it go viral. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's just an emotional topic for me, and I'm so glad that you've all come to the table. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I
Are we gonna
will
say
sign
goodbye?
off and have a wonderful rest of the week, everyone.
Thank you. You
And Lynn, thank you
too.
for staying up and jumping on so late with us. Next time we'll do it during the day. We're going to sort of switch back day and then early evening, so to give people opportunities.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Good
Thanks,
night, everyone.
ladies. It's great meeting you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.